Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Morgan. I run our marketing team at Blueboard, and we're so excited to have you today for our conversation around what comes next, defining well-being for 2021. I'm here today dialing in from Nashville, actually, so representing the Central Time Zone. Would love to hear from everyone who's dialing in. Please share with us where you're dialing in from and what you're hoping to learn from today. So we're going to get started in just a few minutes. We have the most amazing group of people leaders who are going to share all about how to create a renewed sense of well-being for 2021. And why is this so important? Because in order to take care of everyone on your big, large team, we need to start with ourselves. It's been quite the hectic year, and we want this session today to be all about filling up your own cup, thinking about best practices that you can charge forward with, to influence those that you work with, to make sure that everyone can step into 2021 with a renewed sense of energy, wellness, and excitement and energy to do positive things in the new year. So as we get started, a few things I'm going to go through. First, just some housekeeping. So we are on Zoom. This will be recorded, which means that if you have to drop off early for any reason, not to worry. We're going to be capturing all the amazing things the panelists will share today, and we'll be sharing that out with you just in the next few days, along with a full recap of our favorite takeaways. For those of you who are joining to get your PDC from SHRM, we will be sharing that at the end. Please stay tuned. That will be shared over the chat. Or if you do have to duck out early, please just connect with the panelist. And one of the favorite things we love about Zoom is the ability to chat with each other. So you'll find on your Zoom toolbar the opportunity to chat with the panelists directly. Or what we love most is when you share your ideas with all panelists and attendees. That way you can comment along the way, share your ideas, build on the conversations. And ultimately, we'd love to have you get started with that. Again, for those just joining, feel free to use the chat now. Let us know where you're joining from, which location, what you're hoping to learn from today. And then if you're open to it, in a few words, maybe sharing something that's really necessary for your personal well-being in the workplace. Maybe that's having a greater awareness around how you're feeling each morning, or understanding how connections make you feel more vibrant in the workplace, for example. So anything that helps you stay well, feel free to start sharing that on the chat. And just before we jump in further, we can't have these wonderful events without our fantastic partners that are helping to bring these to life. We have 3 partners today supporting the webinar, and we're going to actually be running a poll in the background. That way, if you are interested in what some of these partners do, you're welcome to check the box for as many as you like. And what will happen is that the members of those sales and marketing team will send you info after the event, or even connect if you'd like to see a complete demo and learn more about their products. So our first partner is Donut. For those of you who aren't familiar, they are a communications tool that really is all about strengthening connections. Based in Slack, you're able to match people for what we call at Blueboard donut dates. You can also have great conversations that help build trust, camaraderie, and collaboration in the workplace. You can learn more about Donut by visiting their website at donut.com, or you can check Donut in the box. Next up is Think Human, again, our fabulous hosts and friends today. Think Human unleashes the soul in business by equipping all people leaders with the skills they need through leadership development programs that are truly rooted and founded in emotional intelligence and the science to impact behavior change. So if you're looking for ways that you can learn more about learning or journey-based learning, please connect with Think Human. You'll be in great hands. I've personally done leadership coaching through their fantastic group of coaches before, and found that to be incredibly valuable for my own well-being as a leader in the workplace. And then lastly, again, I'm Morgan from Blueboard. We're so happy to be part of this conversation today. Blueboard is ultimately a recognition and rewards platform that's built on meaningful experiences. So that means instead of rewarding those on your team for going above and beyond, for achieving an anniversary milestone with something like cash or gift cards, you can let them choose the experience that's most meaningful to them. In the vein of well-being, that might be doing a kayaking trip with your family, at home doing a kit for calligraphy lessons or learning a new language, or having opportunities to spend more quality time with friends and family through memorable, exciting experiences. Check the box on Blueboard if recognition is on your priority list for 2021. So now that we've introduced our wonderful sponsors, we are going to really kick off this moment with a true session on well-being. We want to get into the spirit. So one of our amazing panelists, Sarah Vallon, is going to walk us through a quick meditation and breathwork exercise for a few moments to really ground us in today's conversation. Sarah Vallon, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. And I am so excited to offer an opportunity to practice what we preach. We all talk about wellness an awful lot. And starting a session on wellness with just some short breathing, mindfulness, and grounding can kind of bring us all into this moment together. So wherever you are, whether you're in an office, at home, surrounded by lots of noise, it doesn't matter. Just get really comfortable wherever you're sitting. Place your feet flat on the floor. Sit up nice and tall. If you feel comfortable, you can gently close your eyes and rest your hands gently in your lap. You can have your hands facing palm up or palms down. And if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, just soften your gaze. Find a point in the room where you are or on your computer, just to gently gaze, but intentionally soften your gaze. And take a deep breath in and release it. And just take a moment to check in with your body. Having taken a deep breath with full awareness, maybe for the first time all day. And bring your attention to your feet. Notice where your feet make contact with the ground beneath you. Notice the connection at the ball of your foot, your heels, even each toe, making connection with the ground, fully supporting you in this moment. And notice if you're unnecessarily exerting any energy or tensing your muscles. Just allow all of that stress and tension to leave your body with each exhale, allowing your feet to ground more deeply into the earth. And then bring your attention to your hips, your seat. You can even gently rock side to side, just to deepen your awareness of your body's connection with the chair or couch that you're sitting on. Again, noticing what it feels like to be fully supported in this moment, fully supported by the chair or couch where you're sitting. And from that rootedness, allow your spine to rise up. Imagine a string gently tugging at the crown of your head, creating additional space between every vertebra, elongating your neck, allowing your shoulder blades to fall gently onto your back. And in this moment, again, taking a deep breath in with full awareness, grounding yourself in the present moment. Release your breath and gently open your eyes and return to this moment. Welcome back, everybody. And now I'm going to pass it over to our wonderful host, Hakimia.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Hayin. To all of our attendees across the world. I am Hakimia Jackson, an executive coach and cultural strategist and CEO of Divinely Powered. And today I will be your Think Human moderator. I just want to say, this year got real. This year has definitely been, for some people, a year of awakening. The pandemic alone has forced us to break up with what we call normal and embrace the new. We had to learn to love and accept every part of us, evaluate our relationship to challenges and change and how we respond to it. We've also had to use our voices to fight for the well-being of humanity. with no clear delineation between work and life, individual well-being has become an increasingly prominent topic. This has been a heightened urgency for leaders and organizations all across the world to understand, how do I care for the well-being of my talent? So today we'll explore practices and tools and habits that's needed to have a healthy well-being. This wealth of knowledge that we have today is priceless. And it'll come from none other than Miss Lynette Barksdale. She's the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion of ethics at Epic Games. Latoya Lynn, she's the vice president of talent strategy at Oscar Health. Kevin Yip, he's the COO and co-founder at Blueboard. Sarah Valen Bloom, she's the associate vice president, people enablement, learning, and wellness at Quartet Health. And so let's jump right in. I would love for all of you, first of all, to get off mute. Let's start this conversation. Let's get raw and real. Please share, your own personal definition of well-being. And Lynette, you had a really interesting definition on how you just started off, just assessing and rewiring something. So please start it off.
Hi, everyone. I'm just so excited to be here. Thanks, Akimia, and thank you, Sarah, for that opening. I was very at peace with that meditation. Hey, everyone. I see a lot of you are coming in from Dallas. That is where I'm currently based. And, Akimia, wellness for me this year has taken a whole different meaning and definition, which I think has been powerful and very eye-opening for what the future looks like for me and my alignment and connectivity to wellness. And so for me, wellness is truly very intersectional, right? There's so many things that we can have wellness around, right? Like our personal wellness, our emotional, our mental, our spiritual wellness, our financial wellness, all of those things are intersectional to me. And, for me, that is the definition, is really finding alignment within all of those, each of those for you. And really setting a goal and a path forward to what that means and how that looks, and being able to articulate that goal so that others can support you and show up for you.
Mm-hmm. Making it personal. Yes. Someone else, please share.
Yeah, for me, hello, everyone. Good morning. Well, good morning from San Francisco. For me, well-being, I think has taken on like a new meaning as well during this time. We spend so much time reacting, doing. We're often distracted by just being and sitting with ourselves. And so for me, it's really being in tune with, who you are, and kind of consistently prioritizing and making space for the things and activities and people that bring you energy and positivity.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing.
Yeah, and I can jump in on that. I think, wellness to me is the well-being of yourself, obviously, and the ones that are and other people around you. Just really looking at it in a more holistic way. Obviously, with this pandemic, the quarantine, specifically, lots of people have been put in, and including myself, like put in a place where we have to like focus on our own four walls, no distractions, right? Like, oh, I have to go to work, or I have to go meet with friends, and just fill your weekends and days up of doing activities. And now it's completely slowed down, and you really have to think about, like, am I eating right? I can imagine the attendees, how many of you guys have Pelotons? Either you ordered it this year,
Yes.
or on the way, right? And like your health, and also having more Zoom, meetings with family. So I just see here, like, wellness is self-compassion. Wellness is also compassion for others as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. One of the things I love the word holistic, and I think it's something that people use all the time to refer to wellness, but I think that this year has kind of forced us to look at it in a very different way. And I sort of would love to say I agree with everything that's already been said. It is really holistic in nature. And as somebody who leads wellness at a mental health tech company, and also as a mental health provider by training. I think I have sort of a very unique perspective, but it really is about what works for you. It is such a personal thing.
Yeah.
And that wellness doesn't have to mean the same thing for everyone. But as we think about wellness on an organizational level, and even just for ourselves, what works for one person is not necessarily what's going to work for the other. So I think Lynette was talking about, really understanding yourself and knowing, what works for you, and that awareness that it's not a one size fits all sort of statement.
Yes, you're so right, Sarah Valen. So help me with this then, Sarah Valen. Who showed you the importance of well-being, or what?
Yeah, I think that it's a learning over time. I think that it was highlighted in a much more explicit way when I was doing training as a mental health provider, because if you're not taking care of yourself, and you're not sort of filling your own cup, you are not going to be available to take care of your patients. You're not going to be able to take care of others, and you're just not going to be able to really even take care of yourself. So I think that was where I learned it most explicitly, was in my professional training. But I think that life teaches us a lot about wellness. And I think sometimes even life experiences that force us to sideline our own wellness and self-care are sometimes the most profoundly educating experiences that we can have. It's a moment where you come out of it and you're like, oh, I can never do that again. I need to take care of it. I need to prioritize this thing. Or
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And what about you, Lynette? Who was that person, or what experience taught you about the importance of well-being?
Yeah, when we were first talking about this, I realized that when I was growing up, the community that I grew up in was surrounded with a lot of amazing women of color who just worked so hard, and actually weren't examples and role models of what self-care should look like, or really balance and well-being and alignment, not even balance, but alignment. And, it really took me figuring that on my own and really reflecting, and later on in my career, and actually hitting a wall where I was starting to have anxiety attacks and panic attacks and had no idea where they were coming from, because it was absolutely abnormal for me to have any of those symptoms, any of those things happen. And it really took me those moments to figure out, what was missing, what type of self-care was missing. And the things that I saw modeled growing up around just like working really hard. And especially when I think about my mother and all of her friends who were honestly just like, I don't know how they did it all. I mean, and I think that they were truly harming themselves in some way, trying to do it all. And I think for me, it was a lesson learned around how I need to rewire what I know, and what was taught to me, so that I could then have a different legacy. I could show something different in how you show up and how you operate, how you take care of yourself. So it really took me reflecting on what I saw growing up, and the same thing that I was currently modeling for me to change it. And when I did, it just drastically shifted how I could show up, not only for myself, but for others. And so I think, however we learned it as children, or what we saw, I think we need to take stock and to say, was that right? Or are there things that we want to change so that the future generations don't model the behaviors that we have?
Yes, well said. And you said something, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Latoya. I just want to say this. It's easy for us to build a wealth legacy, a career legacy, but if you look at well-being, building a well-being legacy, that's important. So go ahead, Latoya.
I was just gonna say, very similar to that, right? We work in the corporate space. When you work in tech space, everything is go, 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 fast, fast, fast. You're well in the ocean, red ocean, so many priorities and competing priorities that will generate burnout over time, right? And I I'm a big believer in like self-care, or just choosing a day or so that you have for yourself. And not many of us have the luxury of a full day. You have kids and so on and so forth. But like just maybe a couple of hours where you are checking in with yourself and asking yourself like a series of questions on a regular basis. Like, how did I feel this week? What do I need to change? Did I achieve any of my personal goals? Like, did I exercise? Did I, do all those different things, right? Because for whatever reason, it was built in us to constantly go, 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 drive, drive, drive. And you kind of, it's almost like you burn and fizzle out more than anything. And that's not the right thing to do. So make sure you're checking in with yourself. If it's not every day, at least, on a weekly basis. And if you have a lot of kids or like a family or a partner, or, or you're married, or like a really close friend, whatever it is that you have, you can like even have them be accountable partners. Like maybe the whole family sits down in a circle and it's like, hey, how was your week? How are you feeling? And just make it a part of your routine. This is something that my wife does. I do with my 8-month-old son. We all kind of just check in on how we feel, right? And making sure that we can really connect, mind to heart and environment.
Well said, Latoya. Kevin, you had a really unique experience to you realizing that well-being is very important. Please share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was, it was an early experience, kind of like when I was growing up. I used to have night terrors as a kid, and they started after kind of like our first family dog died. And it was really just about kind of this, really what caused it was just kind of this repression of like emotion and honestly just, letting it all out. And my mom, like, basically had, continued to like, talk to me about my feelings and like saying like, it's okay to like, miss our dog. It's okay to like cry. And like, eventually I just broke down and like let it all out. And then, literally after this like one conversation that my mother had with me, the night terrors went away. And so like, that was kind of the first time, I think I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, that like, I was like, okay, wow, like, checking in and like understanding like my feelings, right? Like at that age, uh, is really important. And so that was kind of like my first kind of like experience. And since then it's obviously evolved, but that was like my first experience.
And what happened in the as you grew older and you got more put on your shoulders and more responsibilities? What was the impact as an adult? So yeah, your mother, she helped you through those moments and you were able to use that as a reflection point. But then sometimes, with life, you get distracted and you forget, and then you find yourself back in these moments. What happened then?
Yeah, like, I think one thing that I've never shied away from is it's okay to tell people you're not okay. It's okay to seek out help and support, and to also cultivate that like support community and like, people you can lean on, during those times. And so, I think more than anything that I've been pretty open and honest and vulnerable, with my family, my friends, like, kind of our company, uh, to tell people I'm having a crappy day, or I'm in like I'm feeling very anxious, right? That wasn't the only time that I went through kind of like these acute like anxious moments. And so I think more than anything, that vulnerability and asking for help and just stating it has really it has really helped me further my well-being.
So that's a perfect segue. What makes well-being important for organizations?
I think for how I think about it for our company at Blueboard, right, is that you as an employee, right, you can't really do your job, right? I don't think in like kind of the way that you'd like, without being in this this state of like feeling energized and feeling well, feeling healthy, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard, right? Like, if you don't have, if you're sick, right, or if you're anxious, right, it's very hard to kind of, it's hard to think about, oh, what should we do 2 months from now? It's like, oh, like in the moment I'm so anxious and stressed now that it kind of it takes away, that ability to look forward and look ahead. And so, one of the things we want at Blue Board is like, hey, like, it's a chance for all of us to come together and really align our purpose and kind of our energy, with our mission. And that requires, tons of energy and commitment. None of that's happening if you're not in a positive and healthy state. So I see it as like, almost like a prerequisite, if you will, to work.
That's true. Lynette?
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to respond to Anna.
Okay.
I'm balancing myself because Anna just made such an important comment around how it's important to note that not all childhood experiences were cared for. And I think, I think that's really important. So I didn't want to miss that, calling that out, because I do think there's a lot of work that we need to do around childhood trauma, that a lot of us need to do around our own childhood trauma, and really starting to rewire behaviors again that were learned as children that were either good or bad, right? And really thinking about those and not even making them that binary, but making sure that we're dealing with those. And I think sometimes we forget that the stress and anxiety that we carry is sometimes stemming from those experiences we never managed. But to your point, Nikemia, around the workplace and why it's so important is, I think, we talk a lot about culture in the workplace. And I think sometimes we forget that culture is rooted in the well-being of people. And if you have a negative culture, what ultimately that means is that people feel as though they can't show up. They don't feel good doing their job. They don't feel good fulfilling their purpose. And so, in a workplace, we forget that people, I like to use numbers a lot. I like to use data, right? Like 100%. That's really all we've got, right? I know some people say give 110%. No. You're going outside of yourself and really picking up an extra 10% to get there, right? So if we just stay grounded, there's 100% of us. We have to understand that if work is taking up 60, 70, 80% of that, your life, your children, your family, what you're taking care of, especially during COVID, your own health is taking up another percent. You have to take stock of what is adding up to 100%. And I think at work, we forget that we can't take from people, and we have to ensure that they feel some type of alignment between what's happening at work, outside of work, so that people have the space when they come to work to do their best work, as Kevin was saying, because they're grounded, they're centered, they know that things are being taken care of. And I think that is the importance of the workplace. And as a leader, and I think we'll get into this maybe a little bit later, but as a leader, I think we have to remove this notion of that everyone should be leading people, because I think you should really
Come
have
on,
to
Lynette.
sign up, right? Because when you sign up for taking care of people, which is really what a leader is doing, taking care of people, then that actually means you have to give a little something of yourself. But it also then means that you have to know yourself. And so I think it's really important that when we think about the workplace, that we really have to kind of break it down into pieces, right? Like, what are the things that we are providing to people on teams and at companies so that their mental health, their medical health, all of those things are taken care of. But then how do they interact with people, their leaders? All of that comes into play. And I think there's a lot that companies need to do beyond. I think meditation is very important. It's a great baseline, but I think we need to look holistically at well-being and tie that into culture more than what we're doing right now.
I just have to say, like everything Lynette said, yes, 100%, yes, and yes. But at Quartet, I talk a lot about a culture of wellness. And, I think one of the things that Kevin said earlier was that, in the story about what his mom did, she made it okay to have these conversations. And, there are cultures in families, there are cultures at workplaces, there are cultures in communities. And the more we can cultivate a culture of wellness and openness, the more we have the ability to actually impact wellness in a meaningful way. I think also speaking to sort of healing childhood trauma and wounds, as somebody who is a trauma therapist, it's near and dear to my heart. And I think as employers, it's also important to understand the differentiation between creating a culture of wellness and a space where it's okay to talk about things, and understanding like when it is our role to support people in getting the right care, right? Like at work is not the place to provide therapy necessarily, but knowing when to encourage and how to encourage somebody in a sensitive, kind, and genuinely caring way to get the support they need. And then having the benefits, as Lynette was just mentioning, already in place so that you have really awesome resources to offer people when you enter into those conversations. It's not like you're first starting to look for them. All of this infrastructure is there that supports you really practicing what you preach.
Yes, yes. And I know we lost LaToya, the video, but she's still here with us. LaToya, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Awesome.
Okay, my just for everyone who can relate to this, I said it earlier, my internet is operated by, so I'm going in and out of video just so everyone can hear me. But I think just to continue to contribute to that conversation, I just want to just send a big call out that we all need to either continue to kind of in the vein of what Sarah's talking about, get a therapist, or if you haven't had one before, try to work on really identifying that, because not as serious, and this is the time to really focus on that. And if you have a gym membership, if you have a Peloton account, you should also have connections to a therapist. That is all part of that health and well-being, and anything else that is involved with that.
Yes, thank you, LaToya, for sharing so much. What I heard all of you say, I think is very important. And I'm seeing some commentary on, the legacy of well-being, understanding who you are. What can leaders do individually at an individual level about their own well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to kick us off. I mean, I think, I'll talk about what I did, and then hopefully someone will gain, because I think everyone's a little bit different, right, Hakimia? For me, a lot of it was self-reflection work. So really taking time to figure out, what are my triggers? What are things that deplete me? When do I feel encouraged and motivated? And when are moments that maybe my spirit is not aligned to encourage and motivate someone else in that moment, so that I can take stock of those moments and then figure out how do I then show up for everyone on my team. Because, I'd say this, and, this could be right or wrong. I have every day, I think it's a little bit different. There was one time I had about 40 people on my team, and I used to say I have 40 different personalities, because everyone needed for me to show up with them in a different way. And part of the power in that is because I knew myself and I knew what I could offer to those individuals, I would show up in the ways that they needed in that moment. And so I think for a leader, it really is about taking stock and knowing yourself, and being willing to, take hard feedback, and being willing to grow, and being willing to, not be defeated when you get, feedback that's constructive. And I think as leaders learn how to continuously take feedback, how to ask for feedback, how to really identify social cues, work on their emotional intelligence, all of those things are going to allow leaders to then be in a better place where they can allow for room to talk about wellness, to talk about well-being on their teams. I think when a leader is struggling with how do you manage people, sometimes they kind of skew towards micromanaging, truly putting a lot more stress on people. But if you're continuously learning how to influence and motivate people, then it's very different in how they get things done. And so I'll pause there, but I think that's a little bit around how leaders can do that, is really to take stock of like, what are those key competencies as a leader that you may be missing out on, that you need to work on in order to make a better environment for your team.
Well said, well said. And what I've seen just with, coaching executives is when it's hard for them to manage teams, one reason is because it's hard for them to manage themselves. So it's hard for them to manage teams, right? Because they don't know themselves. And then two, the environment, it may say, you don't have enough time for this because you need to make sure you hit this metric. It doesn't matter. Just do your job and do the role. That's it. So Kevin, what do you say to those organizations where the team environment is just less focused on the numbers? It's not about well-being.
You know, I think it's tough because like those organizations kind of completely miss the point, right? Is that like people are doing the work, right? People are driving towards those numbers, and then so you take care of the people, and then they'll have the ability and kind of energy to take care of the work. You know, I was thinking back, you know, just a little thinking about like what do I do, kind of, you know, as a leader to make sure that my well-being is, you know, kind of I'm connected to it. You know, one thing early on that I did, we went through, it was actually at a conference, I forget what it was called, but were these energy audits about, you know, hey, let's look back at your last week and let's kind of see like what, you know, sapped you of your energy, right? And what actually like kind of, you know, what added to your energy that you were really motivated by. And so like, I think like simple things like energy audits of like different tasks and activities that like either like add or like subtract are like really important so that you know where to draw the line of like, okay, you know, and you can't always do this, but like, you know, kind of, you know, just draw the line almost for the ones that sap you of your energy, right? And figure out how to spend more times, you know, in the place that kind of give you energy and motivation, right? And I think it's something simple that's like really kind of often overlooked of like, oh, like what are the activities and daily tasks that like, you know, kind of fill your cup. Something simple and tactical.
Yeah, Sarah, you did talk about that fill your cup. I wanted to go a little bit more deeper in that. I love what someone else said in the chat. I think it was Ann. She said, wow, energy audit. That's one thing that she does. That's pretty cool. But let's talk a little bit about filling that cup.
Yeah, sure. So you know, I think it's about self-care. It's about wellness. It's about all of the things that we're talking about. But, you know, it is so personal and really understanding, you know, what are those things that are draining, as Kevin was just talking about, and then what are those things that replenish you? And that can be different day to day, week to week, at different stages of your life, you know, depending on what, you know, are the needs and things that are, you know, like kind of externally pulling on you. How do you sort of take stock of what those things are and make those changes? So like, you know, if somebody is a runner, you know, and that's the thing that fills them up, that's awesome. But, you know, meditation is a great example. I think meditation is great. There are people who don't like meditation and it's stressful. The idea of sitting even quietly for 3 minutes and meditating sounds like a nightmare to them. And that's okay. You know, there has to be options for everyone. It's such a personal sort of journey and approach. And I think that when we talk about a culture of wellness, and, you know, I responded to something in the chat, a question about, you know, building that culture, it's really leading by example, which is something that Lynette was talking about, you know, in mental health. And I think it's just as true in leading people. You can only take people as far as you've gone. And if you're not willing to put yourself out there, if you're not—
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, as a therapist, they say your therapist can only take you as far as they've gone in their own work. And just, I think as human beings, we're only able to lead people as far as we have led ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be willing to sort of step out there and say, hey, these are the things that I do to take care of myself. And this is why I do it. It doesn't mean that what I'm doing is right for you, but let's, you know, it's really intended to spark the conversation about what are those things for you? Is it taking a walk? Is it just sitting quietly? Is it meditating? Is it running? Is it cooking? Is it spending time with friends and family? It can be anything. You know, it's really, how do you take care of yourself and take a moment to sort of reflect on that and have some self-compassion also, right? Because I think that that's a big driver. We might be aware of what fills our cup, but if we don't have that compassion piece and the willingness to act on it, it's not going to happen. But without that, we are not going to perform. Our people are not going to perform. There are people and there are functions. And the functions, you know, that sort of lead to that data at the end of the day, that lead to those numbers, the people are behind that. And if they're not in that place, they're not performing.
Yes. Yes, Sarah Valen, well said. So perfect segue into, you know, what are some of the frameworks organizations can use to create that well-being culture that you, Kevin, and Lynette talked about?
I mean, we use our town halls and like company all hands to really demonstrate that. Our leadership team is very committed. I mean, we happen to also be a mental health company, so mental health is sort of integrated into the dialogue regularly in terms of how we, you know, the people that we work with and for. But I think leading by example, and it is a very much top-down approach. You cannot say to people, oh yes, it's okay to talk about wellness, if you're going to sit there and just like listen and wait for them to tell you about it. You have to live that. You have to lead by example. You have to say, you know, this is my experience. I am very open. I will say I put on my calendar, do not schedule therapy, because that's the time that I'm going to therapy, and that's okay.
Right.
Everybody sees on my public calendar that I'm going to therapy, because if I'm going to encourage you to do that, I need to be very clear about why I think that's important and why I know that's important.
Yes.
And as a leader in an organization, people see that. And it's like, oh, Sarah Valen has that on her calendar. And it's true. I one time my own therapist rescheduled an appointment, and I said to somebody, I'm so sorry, my therapist just moved my appointment. Can we move our meeting a half hour later? You know, it's not like just a do not schedule block. It's a self-care block.
Yes. Yes, I love that. Drawing that line in the sand, creating those boundaries physically, emotionally, and mentally. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
They're saying so many powerful things. And I truly do believe that we not only leading by example, modeling, actually putting those things in place, but taking stock and auditing if they're working for people. I'll give a very good example. When we all went into lockdown mode and quarantining, everyone said, we got to get video conferencing. Zoom is it. Zoom is the solution. That's how everyone on board. Zoom is it.
Zoom.
Or Google Hangout, whatever it is, that's the way we do it. And we forgot that actually is not great for everyone. People, there is a real thing about fatigue. We forgot that there are introverts. We forgot that people actually sometimes run and hide away from cameras on purpose. We forgot that everyone's living situation is not conducive to them being on a video camera. And all of those things, I think, took an additional toll on people's mental well-being. Instead of it helping people, we were like, that's going to connect us. But I think what it actually did, and what I think it's forcing us to do, is to truly think about what do individuals need and how do we create space at companies for people to share that feedback in a way for us to take action on it. And so if there's anything I can offer as a follow-up from what Sarah was saying, is not only do those things, but take an audit, get feedback from everyone to see if those things are working or what you need to do differently. I think this one size fits all model it's not going to work for anyone, I think, ever again. And I'm really interested as we start going slowly back into the workplace, how we are going to adjust to the different needs that everyone has. And I think people are now starting to settle in to what they need more. And I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be a challenge for companies to make sure that we can live up to that.
Yes. Well said, Lynette.
One of the things that I think has been really helpful for us, right? And, we talked about kind of creating this culture of well-being is really empowering managers, team leaders to, advocate for their team and have that kind of license to, hey, I had like one of our sales leaders being like, you know what, like this team has been working really hard. I think they're feeling burnt out. Like I want to give them, the Friday off. I'm like, awesome, great. Thank you for bringing that up. Like, let's absolutely do it. Monday too, right? And I think, as the company gets bigger, like there really needs to be that culture. So, the people who are, leading the teams on the ground, having those daily conversations, feel empowered to do something about it, right? And that starts with modeling it at the top. For instance, and sometimes, right, like we're talking a lot about kind of these micro moments that kind of create space. Sometimes you have a month-long project, you're working 12 hours a day, and you're like, it's very difficult, even if you do have that micro moment to fill the cup, right?
Right.
You take out 10 units of energy and you put back 1, right? It's unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had one of those kind of, we'll call it sprints, at the end of summer. And, I was like, I know I'm going to be burnt out in a month, right? I already know it, right? And I'm booking a vacation. I'm putting it on my calendar, and I'm going to look forward to that. The next month's going to suck, but I'm going to get through it. And then I'm going to be in Mexico, and I'm going to work remote for a few weeks, and it's going to be amazing. And, being able to like just have a little bit of that awareness, and also, putting that, it almost as like a carrot for me, at least, right? Of like being able to get through some difficult times helps.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, for one, everyone's loving your rawness right now, Kevin, and your vulnerability. Because, we always talking about what Lynette said, going 100, but sometimes we need to be 100 with ourselves as it relates to what takes from our cup and what we need to fill our cup. And so, Kevin, I want to talk a little bit about what are some of those just HR practices, that employees and leaders could implement within organizations.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with one and then pass it on. I think, for us, we saw, we have kind of like our PTO policy is a minimum 12 days. And that's kind of like, it is unlimited, but we want people to take a minimum of 12 days. And, we kind of saw that dip, during the pandemic. People kind of like in their head are like, I can't go on vacation. I can't go anywhere. Like, why do I need to take PTO? And so we implemented, mental health days to just, take a Friday off, take a Wednesday off, right? Just to give people space. You don't have anything to do. You don't need to have anything to do, just kind of unplug a bit. And, just almost like rebranding PTO for
Like
mental
that.
health days. And, my co-founder and myself saying like, next Friday, I'm not going to be here, taking a mental health day. And you will put, mental health day on our calendar, what Sarah Valen said.
Like
so
that.
that's been one, program, if you will, it's been helpful.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing.
Yeah, I don't know if Latoya wants to jump in, or if you want to try to come off mute, or I'll jump in next. But one of the things that I think is really important is that everyone is not able, and I want to call that out and be very, very sensitive to that everyone may not be in the same situation where they can do a lot of the things that I'm talking about, that Kevin's talking about, that Sarah is advocating for everyone to really think about. And I really, I would say try and start with little things that you feel can have a great impact on you. And so, as a HR professional who's worked in companies where it actually wasn't really that easy to change the policies on how people get time off. And, I've worked in those corporations before. And one thing I would say though is, as an individual working in that corporation, one of the things you can think about is, well, what is my personal philosophy? And how do I slowly start to get in alignment to that? And then how do I also communicate that? And then think long-term about how do I align myself to a company that will help me fulfill those things that I want within a company, and how I want to think about my mental health and my wellness. And so creating a plan, I think, can also help us get there. So I do want to call out that, everyone is not able to take, advantage of some of these great things. And I know it's taken me a very long time to even come to have a voice and being able comfortable and voicing that these are the things that I need. And so I think as HR, I think we have to listen more. I think we have to ensure that we have practices in place to get honest feedback from people. I think that we need to ensure that, we are willing to acknowledge that people have needs that the workplace needs to fulfill. And that it is our responsibility if we want people to be the most productive that they absolutely can be. So I would just add in those couple of things.
Yes, thank you so much, Lynette. And I don't know if we still have Latoya. I know she's been engaging the audience via the chat. Are you still there? Okay. So I know she chatted me and said she's been engaging everyone via the chat. So Lynette, you bring up a really good point. When you and I talked previously, we talked about how some people, they may feel afraid to speak up, right? To say, hey, this is what I need. Everyone here, you're on the call, you're a senior executive. So it's a little easier to speak up. What do you say to those people that say, you know what, I'm afraid, or my boss doesn't see it as something that's important?
Yeah. So a couple of things, and again, not all things can be done. Everyone knows their individual situation. I would say start by using any feedback mechanism that you have in the workplace to start giving honest feedback. I think we're all adults. Try the conversation first. Maybe you don't say, I need a mental health day, but maybe you say, hey, it's really important for me to show up for my kid on this Zoom right now, because we're not in person, for this thing at this moment, or for my sister or my parents at this moment. Try something like that and see what that response is. I also want to say, I do believe that we have, just based on our institutions and our systems, we've come up with this narrative that has become reality in many ways, that some of our leaders aren't as human as we think they are. And what I'm hoping is that this pandemic has really shown us that we're all human, and that anything can happen to anyone at any moment. And I do think that, I will say a silver lining, even though knowing that there are some people who have had just extreme trauma and grief during this time. And so everyone may not have a silver lining during this pandemic. But that I think people's emotional ability and capabilities has changed in some ways. And so I do think now could be a great time to say, I know we might not have been able to talk about this before, but I would love to see if you're open to talking about X. Or I would love to see if we can have a conversation in a couple of days, like maybe tee up your manager if they're not one who can really think on the spot and they don't have that skill set, right? So those are a couple of things that I would attempt and try. And then anytime you do a company survey, I would definitely put that in the feedback, right? In any open fields, like this is what we need, and just know that you might have to make progress on your own before your company catches up to you. And so really think about those little things you can do.
And go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to something that Lynette said. I think that there's, speaking to like that one size, earlier she said, that one size fits all model is not going to work anymore. And I think that as we're thinking about programs and things that we can put in place for people to come up with options, right? That it's not just like, oh, we offer meditation and that's what we're doing, because that's not going to work for everybody. Or the time off I'm thinking about even the way that we've implemented certain things at my own company that, there have to be options that work for different people. And having a full week off for some people is actually more stressful than being able to take a day here and there. A full week off to just sort of sit alone with your thoughts is not necessarily the ideal. And other people may really enjoy that. And so and I'm just using time off as an example, but any kind of programs that you come up with, you have to have a few different options for people to choose from, so that they are able to sort of customize it for them in the way that it works. I think the other thing that Lynette touched on, and Kevin also spoke about this earlier, I think one of the things that has happened with COVID is that it has been very humbling for people. And for the first time, I think ever, it's okay to not be okay. It feels awkward sometimes to start meetings. I mean, I start every meeting asking people how they are, and that's a genuine question. But typically the response that you get is, I'm great. And now, like, it's okay to say to somebody, I'm actually not doing great. Like, this is really stressful. I have 4 kids that I'm trying to homeschool behind me, and I have a dog, and I have to, go to the bathroom, and I have to do this, and all the things of just like life. And the idea of somebody saying, I'm doing great, like, I want to know how that's possible, because I don't really think anybody's, figured this out. So I think it has opened the conversation and opened the door, to Lynette's point, to say this, let's talk about this, and we're all sort of in this together in a different way than we have been in the past.
Yeah. And if you're not in it together, meaning if the values are different than what you follow, then you have to make that hard decision and have that tough conversation with self. So it all goes back to knowing self, as it relates to your well-being. And so the last question is, how do you maintain that consistency and sustainability as it relates to your well-being?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think one of the things that I have tried successfully is, blocking off moments in my calendar. Like Sarah said, it's just a practice that I've held on to. Knowing the moments, knowing my triggers. So not only knowing them, but actually taking action. So like Kevin said, he knew that he was going to have a month of craziness. Like if I know there's going to be a period of time where I know I'm going to be reaching my max, I will schedule something right after it. So I have kind of a North Star, something exciting to look forward to. For my team, I actually asked them to share with me what their well-being goals are, what their wellness goals are, so that I can help hold them accountable to those things as well, right? And in a very loving, nurturing way, but I can also check in with them and say, you told me you wanted to go to the gym twice a week, but I don't see it on your calendar. I don't remember you telling me about that in our check-in. Doing it, or you said you wanted to go try some, so like really helping, because again, I know their wellness and their ability to be aligned in ways will ultimately have them show up better at work. And so for me, it's a two-pronged approach in order to reach a goal that I think is helpful for everyone.
I think accountability. Oh, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I think accountability is something that is so important. And, as we talk about, cultivating a culture of wellness and building relationships between colleagues on teams, and, having wellness be an integral part of that accountability. We are accountable for so many things as it relates to our work. To check in with people and make sure that they are taking that time for themselves, that they feel supported by their teams. There is this peer support element that if you're able to sort of build that into the way that people operate together, it creates sustainability naturally, because everybody then is holding each other accountable, because sometimes we all forget to check in with ourselves. But the person that we have, 20 meetings with a week didn't forget that we said we're going to do this thing, and they're going to be like, hey, did you do that? Not in an accusatory way, but in a way that really is genuine and supportive, because they're looking out for us, and just as we would for them. And so I think building those kinds of relationships and cultivating that kind of work environment leads to sustainability naturally without as much effort.
Yeah, no, Sarah, I love that. It kind of leads into a little bit of what I was going to say around. I think of like well-being is very much like a habit, and myself wanting to build that habit and build that discipline, right? And when things are a habit, you don't think about it, right? You just do it, right? Because it's a habit. And so, I think, for me right now, meditation is actually, I use it as almost like aspirin, and I've been doing it probably on and off for, the past 7 or 8 years. And, what I realized is like, kind of like, there's this like internal voice of like, I don't need to do that, or I don't have time to do that. And I kind of separate myself from that voice. And I really try to focus on, that's just, I'm listening to it. And my voice is just, something that's kind of just floating by. And it really tries to help me ground me and kind of building this discipline to build a well-being habit. And so, I think that kind of obviously can apply to self, right? And then that also can apply to an organization and to a culture, right? Lynette, I love that, for you, it sounds like, checking in and accountability and, asking, what you're doing for your well-being. That's like a great habit to do, like as you check in, maybe it's like a weekly one-on-one. I wrote that down. I want to do that. I want to build that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So thank you. We are at time. Thank you to all the attendees, the panelists, Think Human Donut Blue Board. I leave you with this: do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, you do better. So continue to do better. Have an awesome weekend, amazing holidays. God bless you all, and see you later. Bye.
Bye, y'all.